Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Costa Rica Crypto. And today I have the opportunity to speak to somebody who I have been watching for a long time, who I'm a fan of, and a fan who's kind of brought me a little bit closer into some of the concepts of EOS, including DAC. So I'm having a conversation today with Mr. Luke Stokes from EOSDAC. I want to thank you for showing up. I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with me and for coming out.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too, Luke. As I said, I've been a fan for a long time. I love the whole EOS DAC thing, and it's going to be pretty cool to have a couple quick conversations with you here.
I'd love to talk to you about Costa Rica as well, like this background image that now people give me a bunch of crap about. It actually is from Costa Rica. I took this picture myself, actually. My wife and it was back when we only had 2 kids. We spent 10 weeks in Costa Rica, and this is one of our balcony shots that I took. I just love. So it's like, yeah, I get to explain my
Where did you guys go? Where did you travel
to? We were in Huacas, which is like the Costa Peninsula, right by, not too far from Playa Grande, where I surfed my brains out and just loved it. It was amazing.
The people are cool here, right?
People are way cool.
Yeah, I love it, man. And I'm in Guanacaste as well. I'm actually in Playa del Coco, so Guanacaste vibe is good. It's relaxed.
Nice. Yeah.
I want to kick it off really quickly and just kind of regress a little bit. We'll take you back a few years. So I'm always interested kind of with people and the process that they went through to get to where they are. So obviously, when little Luke was kind of roaming the earth and you were just a kid, right? EOS didn't exist. Bitcoin probably didn't exist, of course. What kind of led you from, what did you want to do when you were that little kid, and what kind of changed along the way to get you to where you are today?
It's such a great question. Like, I love the origin stories. Like, my favorite TV shows and movies always have great character development. I think when I was a kid, there was a part of me that was like, yeah, I'm going to be like significant. I'm going to be like a sports star or something like that. I didn't have like a career picked out much. Even during high school, I was a pole vaulter and I was pretty good at pole vaulting. I also did water polo. I ended up going to college, pole vaulting, pole vaulted at UPenn. But it wasn't until my senior year that I was like, started dinking around with computers. So I started building web pages for my friends in 1996. Yeah, 1996. So I've been doing this for more than 20 years now of just computer stuff. And I ended up majoring in computer science and kind of always thought like, man, computers are amazing, especially the internet development, because you just create your own reality. You can think of something and then build it. And I'm not a super artistic person. My sister is amazing. She does all these incredible artistic things. But for me, that's my art expression, is creation through code. And so, yeah, I kind of just started playing with code. This was during the .com craziness. I graduated college in 2001. So there's a whole kinds of people like, come back, don't go off and finish college, go ahead and work for us instead. And also during high school, it was probably a formative part of my life. I lived on a boat for a couple of years. My parents lost their house. And so we had some financial troubles, and that, just recognizing that real life doesn't change whether you have money or don't have money. Like one of the best Christmases I ever remember is our family writing letters to each other because we had no money to give gifts. And that was amazing. And so I've kind of been with money, been without money, and recognized that true relationships and the meaningful parts of life don't really change a whole lot. If you, obviously money is a good thing and we should have it. But that was a formative part of my life to recognize just, anybody could be with and without, and we all benefit when we try to create a world that we all want to live in. And that's kind of my latest understanding of myself, is I want to create a world that is something that benefits me and my family and my friends, but also others, so that I think the reason why we don't like to see that person poor or destitute in the street is because like we don't want to live in a world where that happens, right? So even if we're like altruistic and helping them, we're really just helping ourselves because we don't want to see that, right?
It's awesome. Yeah, we had a little preamble in some of the schools of thought. I think that's pretty cool. I grew up on a boat too. I didn't live on one, but did a lot of sailing, and some of my best times were spent with my father being chased up the coast of Maine on a sailboat.
Oh wow, cool.
Yeah.
We were in Newport Beach on the other side of the other coast, but very cool. So you grew up sailing and just used to the ocean, all that.
Man, I was actually I was a commercial diver for a little while. I did some underwater construction and stuff, so the ocean is close to my heart.
Nice.
It was a crazy gig, but unfortunately, divers don't tend to get injured; they tend to get killed. So I saw a couple of things that, I mean, I'm a risk taker, but I saw a couple of things that I was just like, no, I'm good. So
wow. Yeah, it is one of the most dangerous professions, right? It's pretty far up there.
yeah, I've actually done a few of them before moving into what I did. I used to be in health and safety consulting finally, but I don't want to get too sidetracked, but I can relate to the love of the ocean thing. And that's one of the things that keeps me here in Costa Rica. And it's, the ocean's close to my heart. So I get it. That's interesting. I had no idea. Kind of moving forward a little bit, what brought you to kind of the EOS community? What did that route look like? And ultimately, what keeps you here, Luke?
That's a great question. It's kind of a long one too. All right, so I'm going to back up a little bit and we'll tell like a little bit of a larger story. So I've been involved in cryptocurrency for more than 5 years. I bought my first Bitcoin in January of 2013. I spent $50 and I got 2.5 Bitcoin. So I was like, pretty good deal. And what even got me into that, for years, I've been hearing about Bitcoin is this kind of like fake internet money, right? Like, oh, that'll never work. And then one day I saw the anonymous Twitter handle, their account had a Bitcoin address on it, big old long Bitcoin address. I'm like, that's that fake internet money stuff. Anonymous, they're not stupid people. If they're actually suggesting people support them through this, there might be something to this. I might have to look into this. And so I started dinkering around the end of 2012 and 2013. I finally bought some, just to have some skin in the game, and started just deep diving. I mean, spent lost days on bitcointalk.org just reading every thread I could. And because I'm a programmer and been a programmer for a while, I got to, I understand hashes. I understand kind of the basics of how it comes together. Reading the white paper, it's just 8 pages. You could read it in less than 20 minutes. I just kind of went through it and I was like, man, this is amazing. And so I got really excited about it. Started a Bitcoin meetup in Nashville. Got a lot of people excited about it. And that was right up to the end of 2013 where the price was like 1,200. And then I just crashed. Just like 2 years of desolation down to like $250. And I just saw the communities dissipate. And I got looped into some nonprofit, Tennessee Bitcoin Alliance, that just ended up being a huge waste of my time. And, all this kind of stuff. I got a little discouraged. And then Steemit came along and I was like, oh my gosh, this is an actual blockchain people are using, like everyday people. Like this might be the killer app for cryptocurrency mass adoption. And so from that, I learned a lot more about Dan Larimer. And I've been following like Proto shares and Angel shares and all that for a while, just at a distance. And then when BitShares came out, I'm like, it looks cool. And I remember Mt. Gox. So like, we definitely need decentralized exchanges, but like, I don't understand. And that's one of the problems. I think Dan Larimer, I do believe, is a genius. He's one of the few out there that I would say that about, but he builds complicated stuff that sometimes it takes us a few years to catch up to and understand. So learning about delegated proof of stake through BitShares and Steem, when EOS was announced, I was just like, well, yeah, obviously, I want to know about that too. And I love kind of his vision, his kind of anarcho-capitalistic voluntary vision of like, we're going to protect life, liberty, and property. And I thought it was interesting too that he added like justice in there towards the end of developing EOS. And I think part of that maybe is related to like some bad actors on Steemit who basically can't be stopped. So it's kind of like, oh, interesting. So yeah, so it's just, I've been really, I looked at his reading list. I've read some of the same books that he's read, and I really appreciate his passion to improve the world through free markets and economic freedom and voluntary. Every human interaction should be voluntary. Can't delegate rights you yourself don't have. There's no ever a justified reason to violate the non-aggression principle. You can't initiate violence against someone else unless you're protecting yourself or your property. I mean, these are just beautiful philosophical ideals that I find myself very in alignment with. So I'm passionate about him building EOS, as I understand it, to be a platform to then go build all the other things that he wants to build, such as DACs. And that's why I got passionate about EOS DAC.
Yeah. It's funny actually you should say that, because as we kind of talked about in the preamble, and I was perfectly honest with you, I was just I was just kind of like a sideline cryptocurrency investor, and I had a little bit of this and I had a little bit of that, and I was just kind of diving into it. And I thought, and like, I'm just, I can only be me. So the snapshot was coming up, and I was like, well, this seems great. Like this couldn't go wrong. And I had really taken the time to dive into EOS. And the more that I dove into it, and as we both talked about, I'm just I'm what some people might call a normie. Just the more I dove into it, and the more I started to peel some of these layers back, and I saw kind of what was going on. The more I stuck with it, and then the more I started stacking, and then of course I ended up keeping it, and I got sucked into the community for a lot of the same reasons that you're talking about right now, and just kind of peeling back the layers of the onion. so to speak. And then I've been here ever since. And EOS is my jam. So I guess the next question that I want to ask you is for people like me who may never have acquainted themselves in depth with EOS or with a block producer. How would you, if you were speaking to somebody outside of here, how would you break down what is EOS DAC and what is a DAC in general? What are some of the principles that you guys have?
Yeah, that's a good one. And it does kind of require a little bit of backstory, like to explain well, what's a blockchain? Well, blockchain is essentially, a shared Excel spreadsheet. It's a shared ledger. It's a shared, a transparent method of accounting. It's a way that everybody can have all the same data all at the same time. And if anybody makes a change, everybody gets to verify through cryptographic security, yes, that is the right change. And we all agree. It's nonviolent global consensus. That consensus is just hugely amazing. And our species has not been able to do that without using war and other threats of violence, right? So it's a big deal. So with that blockchain, there's also the advantage of kind of the new blockchains where you can put code on the blockchain. You can actually have this autonomous entity running as software code. And just like any corporation where you could have a request to say, I need this to get done, or I need this calculation to happen, or I need some event to take place, such as voting, such as payments, such as verifying identities, whatever process you can automate, you could put that on a blockchain. And so a decentralized autonomous community, a DAC, is really just a group of people that have shared goals they want to accomplish, and they're able to put the structures of governance for their group on a blockchain. So I'll use EOSDAC as an example of how that works. And we're not done yet. We're still building them out, these core layers. But the first layer is the DAC token, which we have done. That contract is completed. So we have different tokenizations of who is a member. And if you own that token, you can actually sign a transaction on the blockchain, and there's a 20-page constitution you got to read through, and there's a hash of that constitution so we know exactly which version you read through and signed, that you're putting that on the blockchain with your using your private key, so we know it's you, and you say, yes, I agree to become a member of the DAC. And now you have all those protections, and we know exactly which kind of rights you're kind of giving up to say, hey, I read the Constitution. I know the governments don't really know what DACs are yet, so I'm going to put myself out there. And I think we did Ravi and the team did a great job of building that document out. And I think we're going to be paving the way for what other governments, how they recognize DACs in the future. And so then that's the first step. The next step would be so once you become a member, you can vote in custodians. And so our system is we have 12 custodians that will be voted in every 7 days. The votes will be tallied, and the people with the most votes, the 12 top, will actually get paid to be custodians. And what a custodian does is handle the next piece of it, which is worker proposals. So when we talk about a DAC, essentially all it is, there's no actual core team or anything like that. There's just worker proposals. And anybody can come in and say, hey, I think I could do this and it would add value to the team. And the custodians look it over and say, yeah, we agree. We're going to go ahead and pay you for that. And then once they complete the work, they go and submit, hey, I'm done. Here's the evidence. And the custodians again say, yeah, we agree. Boom, let's pay that guy. And then if they say, no, you didn't do the work, there's actually arbitration built in and all this kind of stuff that we're working on. So the basics of a DAC is just a way to transparently have a shared goal within a group of people without hierarchy as much as possible. So everybody is the same. And the only hierarchy you put in there is completely voluntary. You use your staked weighted tokens to elect custodians who then get to, in the best interest of themselves, because they want to remain custodians and get paid, and the interest of the network, it's this amazing aligned incentives where they go and say, hey, yeah, we're going to make good decisions. And every decision we make is completely transparent. So people can be like, hey, why did you vote that in? That's ridiculous. Isn't that your, cousin that's doing that project? That kind of stuff we'll be able to hopefully have some transparency on. And we have, again, in the Constitution, mechanisms to say, hey, I'm going to opt out of this vote. I've got a conflict of interest or something like that. For sure. So that's kind of the first part of what a DAC is and how that's going to relate to EOSDAC. But then the next piece, EOSDAC is also a DAC enabler. So we're going to be building these tools for just normal everyday people to just click, click, click. I want to do a token. I want to have this many tokens. I want to do an airdrop. Here's the EOS needed to do that. And here's my own constitution. Here's my own system. And you'd have your own contracts on the blockchain. And you'd have your own community. And you have, hopefully, by the time we get there, step-by-step instructions on not just the technical pieces, but the actual human pieces. How do you run a decentralized community? Who does that? How do you structure your Discord? How do you set up your Google Docs? Just all that kind of stuff. How do you do governance? And then the way this all gets funded as of right now is that EOSDAC is also a block producer on the EOS blockchain. And a block producer is essentially similar to proof of work that Bitcoin has, where there's miners that create blocks and essentially get rewarded with inflation of that token. They take kind of unconfirmed transactions, they sign them, they validate them, that it follows the protocol, and they add them to the blockchain. So that way everybody has that shared understanding of reality. And in delegated proof of stake, which is what EOS uses along with Steem and BitShares, it's like cooperation over competition. Instead of like these competing entities wasting a lot of electricity and effort to try to solve some hard hashing problem, instead they're like, hey, you go next, and then I go, and then they go, and it's all based on stake-weighted votes. So the alignment of the token holders is completely parallel with the alignment of the block producers. And that's something I've seen in the 5 years I've been in crypto. I've seen that alignment fall out of favor. I've seen miners who want to bump up fees and they don't mind clouding the network. And, so it's been really cool to see DPoS work that way. And so as a delegated proof of stake block producer for EOS DAC is kind of a community owned block producer. And every day we get revenue for being a block producer and running servers that actually, secure the EOS network.
Yeah, definitely EOS was my first dive into delegated proof of stake. And as a quote unquote normie, it was cool to wrap my head around it. And that's one of the reasons why I do like it. There's obviously a lot of advantages, not only environmental, but community based, and DPoS is quite it's been interesting coming from a non-technical background to try to wrap my head around some of these things. But it's been cool as well. I guess I'm gonna play devil's advocate. Don't hate me here.
No, it's fine.
But I'm gonna ask, because this is something that's always echoed in the community. It's not something that I'm in agreement with, but we both know that people say it. Well, you guys bought votes. You know what I mean? You guys were vote buying. You were, you paid people off to vote for you. I'm just kind of curious on, and we both. I mean, I've heard you speak. I've actually spoken on that before. I'd love to hear how you might articulate to somebody who has heard some of these things and is on the fence. And how has that changed the way that you operate? And ultimately, what's your response to some of these questions?
Yeah, I mean, so in the year now that I've been a witness on Steem, delegate proof of stake, that is an attack vector that has to be addressed. As far as if you could just buy up a bunch of block producers and you own them and you get to vote them in and they do what you say in order to manipulate the blockchain, you need 2/3 plus 1 to be able to make any kind of consensus changes on DPoS. But it is an important concern. And in the year that I've been a Steem witness, I've never been approached ever for somebody trying to sell a vote. I maybe 3 or 4 times, maybe a handful of times, someone even hinted at, hey, how about vote for me and I'll vote for you? And I've always been like, hell no. Are you kidding me? Did you just suggest that? I'll vote for who's the best block producer. It has nothing to do with, because that's a huge risk for myself and the blockchain. I would be destroying the value that I want to create by doing any kind of vote trading or vote buying, anything like that. And so I really appreciate that EOS has taken a very serious stance about that, saying, hey, this is not acceptable. This shouldn't happen. And it was one of the number one concerns I had, honestly, prior to joining EOSDAC. I went back and forth for weeks with Will and the people on the team before I joined, where I said, well, what about this? If you're going to, even on the side, if you're going to incentivize people to ensure that you become a block producer, because they might in the future think that they're going to get some of, they're potentially participating in the expectation that they're going to share in those rewards. And it was a long discussion back and forth. And ultimately, I did a deeper dive into what vote buying actually is. There's a Wikipedia page about it. There's a lot of countries around the world ban it as a process politically for very good reason. Absolutely. But they never, it's always based on the actual act of voting and or not voting. You could pay somebody off not to vote is another example of it. And that's not at all what's happening. I recognize we're not directly paying people to vote for us. If they want to be members and never vote for us, they can still receive the reward. And that was a really important shift for me. And then another part too, which was just so basic, I could never get around this argument. And it was, would you rather one person or a small handful of people own all the rewards for block production? Or would you like those to be distributed through a community, a decentralized, passionate, community who really wants to improve all of EOS and wants their voice to be heard. And I was just like, well, obviously, like I want to decentralize all the things. So when I heard the argument that way, it was just a no-brainer. I was like, well, everybody should be a DAC, right? Like why do we have these centralized corporations? Why do they get to extract more wealth than the people that are decentralized and their members are actually doing all the work? And it's like, I'm a very, anarcho-capitalist minded person. I'm not saying, I'm not into collectivism for that perspective, but I do recognize that we live collective lives. We're a social species, and I do want to see the people who are adding the value get rewarded. So kind of through that whole discussion, I recognized like, yeah, this really isn't vote buying, but I had some great debates and discussions. One of my most fun conversations was with the Gray Mass team, Scott and Aaron. Those guys are awesome. Justin and NEX, I some of my favorite people in the blockchain space. And we had a long, 2-day discussion on a post he ended up putting out there. Scott put out this great post about like essentially incentivizing votes is detrimental to DPoS. And I completely agree with that post, but it was fun that we battled out the draft prior to that, because he was kind of saying, I think what you guys are doing might fall into this category of incentivizing votes. And I was like, man, and it's interesting because again, here we are, we haven't really officially launched the DAC yet. We haven't given any, all the block producer awards have just gone out to worker proposals, and it may stay that way. I don't know. I mean, we've said that from the beginning. It's not up to us. It's up to the actual custodians that get voted in by the token holders. And if they try to do something where it's just wealth extraction and they try to incentivize people to vote for them just to get a reward, not because we're the best technically excellent block producer, then it's all going to go to zero. Like with that, I totally understand that risk. That's a really big problem. So, but I do think we can find the balance, right? I do think we should reward those who are passionate about the entire ecosystem and to understand DACs. And I don't see, I don't see a problem sharing the profits. Essentially, I don't see it's a benefit to have like a private entity own all of that and then make all the decisions about how it should be used. I feel like everybody benefits if there's enough to spread around a little bit in ways that benefit the network.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, as I said, EOSDAC was the first thing, and I'm not going to lie to you, it was one of the projects that really drew me into EOS when I realized that this is possible. You can have these like community-owned entities, and a lot of the, of course, I'm like the DAP guy, right? I speak to a lot of guys about what they're doing, and a lot of the DAPs that I'm really, really passionate about are based on the similar model. And I'm not going to drag any other projects in here. We both know the ones that I'm talking about, but
I'm actually really excited to hear that, because that's the reason we exist, right? We're going to build the DAC toolkit in a way that all those DAP owners can just be like, oh yes, because like here's an example that most people don't want to talk about. Yep. You create a token, let's say. Well, who controls the private key to that token? I mean, you could have a $50 million or $100 million wrapped up in token, and you're going to tell me there's one dude who controls that private key? Like, oh my gosh, you want to talk about the security risk. So as another basic example from a technical perspective, what we're doing, those 12 custodians will automatically have a multi-signature account for all the funds and everything they do. So it's always going to be 2/3 plus 1 to do anything, to pay out any worker proposal or anything like that. And that includes modifying contracts. So if they're going to say, oh, okay, the community agreed, we're going to modify, let's say we're going to add inflation, or let's say we're going to burn some tokens, or whatever it is the community decides, it's never going to be one individual who does that with a DAC structure. And that's why I think so many different, even people that aren't thinking about DACs today, are going to recognize the value of saying, we want to be able to provably demonstrate that there's distributed ownership that is supported by the community members. And that's just so important, so important. And also too, with DApp, sometimes as an entrepreneur, you just want to build this thing, but you need like 3 other tools to build the thing. So you start starting up all these other companies, and you're like, I don't care about that company. I'm not passionate about doing that. I just need it to exist so it can serve my other company. So with DACs, that becomes a reality. You can launch an idea, get other people to run it, vote in their own custodians, and boom, now you have that service just up and running, and they're self-funded because of whatever, if they use token inflation or whatever, airdrop or an ICO, however they fund themselves, they're up and running. And now you can go focus on your passion, and that's just hugely valuable.
And that's, I won't bring the project name into it. We both know what I'm referring to. But that's when somebody has a passion to be able to do that, and I've heard other people say, I want to build it, I want to set it up, and then I want to go be part of the community. We know who I'm talking about. But I think that's awesome. I think that's really cool that the DAC can allow you to do that, kind of build the dream. You know what I mean? Put the steam engine together, get it all ready. You know what I mean? Take the people, make them the conductor, and then go watch from the sidelines and give input and be involved in the community. So that's super cool. One thing that I always talk about is the launch, Luke. I always refer to, like, I watched my buddies were watching like football. My girlfriend was looking at me like I was crazy. She's like, "Who are you watching right now? What are you doing?"
Why are there 200 faces on a single screen, right?
And I'm like, oh, silent. When I'm kind of, I'm ducking and diving into these realms. I'm trying, because it was the first thing that really, really captivated me along my journey. And you played a large part of that. I really enjoyed watching some of the interactions. How was the launch for you? What lessons have you learned? Is there anything that you maybe would have done differently, or anything that you kind of took away from that's impacted the way that you operate?
Yeah, it was an amazing process. Like I had already been asked to speak on a panel at the Tulip conference, and we were all kind of told that, come June 1, you'll have software that's been tested for a month, and we're just going to launch June 1. So we, as an organization, were making commitments based on that. We're like, oh, well, sweet. If the EOS software is done June 1 or May 1, like if it's done prior to June, then we can spend all our time that we have allotted to developing our toolkit. So we were kind of making commitments like, yeah, we'll have the toolkit ready because we'd have this test net we could be testing our toolkit on, right? None of that happened. And it was all, it's like the code didn't launch, up until like a week later, and it was just lots of bugs, just new security patches every week and stuff like that. And so just being at a conference with all these other people and doing the 12-hour cycle, I'm not sure if you remember the Zoom call, 12 hours, like, call at night, a call in the morning, a call at night, and each 24-hour cycle was like a go, no go call. And it was like a football game. It was insane. It was totally crazy. And it was, there's, a little bit of politicking and brinkmanship and all that kind of stuff going on, people trying to make themselves look important and all that. And I was just sitting there just going, let's just launch the damn chain. Like I was loving, there was one time Dan Lehrman made a comment and he said, my ragtag group of bit shares and Steam witnesses could have launched this already. And I was like, that's right. but at the same time, like I was working with a very great professional team with Rob and Michael, and they're just like, they've been part of this process since the beginning, since last year, since, they launched the first superhero testnet. So they've been dealing with the bugginess of the software, and they're kind of like, wait, this is not how we do professional software. You don't launch a multi-billion-dollar project when you haven't tested the code. Like we're getting new code changes this week we haven't even reviewed, and they're expecting us to go live. So I fully respected both sides of the argument. And I recognize this is kind of a common dichotomy you have. You have the cowboy coders who are just like, test it in production, and then you got the more water. And so there's like agile development, and then you got the more waterfall where it's like everything's, in a 6-month cycle, and you're very methodical, and you got a lot of great test coverage and all that. And so I've just I found myself playing the role of being the in-between. I'm more of a pragmatic kind of get stuff done coder. So that's kind of why I like Dan Larimer's stuff that he's done, because he's like top 3 blockchains on the planet as far as transaction output. He's doing it. So it's like the dude actually delivers. He ships. And yet I also recognize, I for 10 years, ran foxycart.com with my business partner, PCI compliant, level 1, processing, over $1 billion. So it's like we recognize the importance of, solid processes and standards and code coverage and all that. So yeah, the launch itself was one of the most amazing things I've ever been a part of. It really was, because seeing all these people together trying to coordinate things and seeing them have the same shared motivations and yet have some conflicts and work through that. It was pretty incredible. I think one of the things that would have been good would be to clarify that those Zoom calls were really kind of only good for that purpose, the go, no go. Yeah. And the voting on a call was kind of weird and all that. And I'm kind of proud to say that we've stopped that process. And I was instrumental in kind of saying, hey guys, this is not how we do DPoS. Like DPoS is always done on chain. You don't let kind of the influential, charismatic guy like influence the vote, right? Like that's the entire point of putting stuff on a blockchain. It's not politics. It's not the guy with the square jaw and the good smile gets to determine what happens,
Yeah.
So now we're kind of coordinating a little bit better, I think, in terms of block producers, setting up ad hoc calls as needed. Actually, there was one this morning between some of the block producers. So those kind of things are happening, and I feel that's a good thing.
Me too, and super interesting for me. Like I'm not kidding. I watched every one of those calls, and I was
part of me is like laughs to think, really, like there were people that cared that much. Like that's awesome, Matt. I really like that. Encourages me that what we're doing matters.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but before like this would have been before I really kind of started making videos. Not that I'm a big deal now or anything, just kind of starting out. But I commented once, I remember I used to enjoy watching you. It was, you're very, you're very good politically, but watching your face at times was interesting. Watching the face of the other people, and then watching everybody kind of come together at the end, for that final go vote. Everybody was in unison, and it was really like this. It's like Lord of the Rings of cryptocurrency, except, minus the killing and stuff. But just,
oh yeah, no, totally. Like it had that same kind of feel, like we were doing something that mattered,
Yeah.
Storm Mordor,
Mordor. Anyway, I digress. If things go like really, really well for you, Luke, like everything, kind of comes together, where are you sitting in 5 years? What is EOSDAC? How's it doing? What kind of projects is it taking on? And ultimately, what's going to define success for you in this project?
That's a great question. I love thinking about that. My kind of immediate plans actually is personally, as a family, we're looking very seriously at moving to Puerto Rico this year.
Nice.
But before the end of the year, there's a lot of cryptocurrency stuff going on there with Act 20 and 22. There's some benefits that fit my moral philosophy as far as taxation and all that. So I see myself in 5 years, living a very amazing life in an incredible place where I can travel often and connect with people in the community because, we're on an island. So anywhere we go, we're going to hop on a plane anyway.
Exactly.
So might as well travel. And I look at EOS as being what it originally was my understanding, which is this incredible DAP and DAC enabler, this mechanism where it can meet world mass adoption and survive because of the governance, because of the things that people expect of their financial institutions and what they expect of their organizations, that there's recourse if they get scammed, and that idea of the Ricardian contracts, making something simple in English to say, here's what I know that I'm doing, even though I'm not a programmer. And then if it doesn't work the way you were promised, you can say, hey, that's not cool. And it enables personal responsibility because like if somebody fires off a transaction that didn't have a Ricardian contract, well, then it's like, well, what are you doing? Like it should have a Ricardian, don't use that app, right? Like, just getting people to take on personal responsibility is just so exciting to me. So I see EOS as being this amazing global blockchain that is being used by governments, by corporations, by individuals, but especially by DACs. And I think that DACs, this blockchain is one of the, with 500 millisecond transaction times and this ability to be efficient and effective. I think it's one of the first tools that could actually pull off building DACs. People have been doing stuff like that on Ethereum, but there's costs with everything. And in here, if you have your token staked, there is no cost essentially. And that's a very cool thing. So in 5 years, I would hope that there are multiple brand name organizations that people know about that have restructured themselves as DACs, that talk about and promote EOSDAC as the tool set that they used, the thing they pointed to say, look, there's an example, we can do that too. And then ideally, I don't even like to use the word governments, but I would like to say that social organizations within communities start to transition to a DAC model as opposed to a government. So I wouldn't say governments shape themselves as DACs and become DACs, really just the concept that defines nation state governments, this monopoly on the use of force in a geographic region, that just goes away. And people say it would be more like an HOA, right? Like a voluntary system of contracts between adults. That would just be amazing. If their EOSDAC would be enabling DACs around the world, and that we could all as a community get some recognition for the work we've done to build this DAC enabler, and the token holders of EOSDAC could also benefit from all of that, value they've created in the world. Like I would love to see that.
Absolutely. That's a deep thought. For me, it's kind of funny you should mention traveling. Like, I'm not necessarily like a material guy. Like I don't care if I have a Lambo. I don't care if I have like a private Learjet. For me, unfortunately, being a capitalist society, you do need money. And for me, my passion really lies in traveling. I like to see how other people live. I like to, one thing that I talk about often is these people who have no money and who are just happy. You know what I mean? Like maybe they have $5 to get a cooler full of drinks together and they bring the kids down to the beach. And to me, that's like a mind blowing concept in this world where we're just mass consumers. So, traveling, I totally get it. I guess this is kind of it's kind of a preamble into, I want to know, like, when Luke is not working, you know what I mean? You spoke about, I really like your Twitter because there's some blockchain stuff in there, but there's also kind of like some deep thoughts from the world of Luke. And one of those the other day had to do with achieving balance. I guess what I'm trying to ask you ultimately is, what do you do for fun? Like, how do you find that balance with everything that you're doing, everything that you have on your plate? Because as a young entrepreneur myself, it's something that I tend to struggle with. I guess I would say a bit of a workaholic as such, but how do you peel yourself away from that world and just enjoy everything around you?
That's a great question, because it's a very common challenge with a lot of driven entrepreneurial people. And I definitely have gone through my seasons of figuring that out myself. So I've been running my own business. Like I said, I sold it this year so I could focus full-time on cryptocurrency. So I've kind of been my own boss for more than 6 years already. And I work from home, and I got 3 kids now, 3 young kids, 9, 7, and soon to be 5. And so that dynamic of figuring out that life-work balance is so critically important, because we do our best creative work when we're at rest, when we're, at peace, when we're not being directly externally motivated, when we're intrinsically motivated, and we can know ourselves well enough to know what our own motivations are. So it's a really important thing to find that balance. And I don't always do it perfect, but I think what I do for fun now, I hang out with my kids. I love audiobooks and listening to, that kind of stuff, learning. I love edutainment on YouTube. So I have all kinds of channels that I learn from and get entertained by. I love watching movies, love hanging out with my wife, and part of that, like I was recently started skateboarding with my son. He's 9, and we started going to the skate park all the time. And just actually right before this trip to Colorado, I was at DisCon speaking there, and right before the trip, I hurt my back the day before, because I'm like, oh man, I'm almost 40 now. And maybe I can't skate as I used to, but I like to stay active. Used to do a lot of disc golf, and I got shoulder issues and all that. So it's like I got a bunch of pole vaulter injuries from back when I was a pole vaulter in college. But those are basic things I like to do. I love having philosophical conversations with friends. So I have some good friends that we can connect with sometimes, and maybe watch a movie or a show or not, and just kind of sit around, maybe drink a beer, have a sip of whiskey or something, and just talk moral philosophy and futurism and, all that kind of stuff. I geek out about that. And I do a lot of that online as well, just on Steemit and Twitter and Facebook, just having important conversations. Because a lot of people kind of think, oh, what's the point of that? You're just talking, it's mental masturbation, right? You're just talking about who cares about philosophy, right? But I actually look at it and go, no, like that actually directly, pragmatically impacts my actions. If I'm going to be a custodian or I'm going to be part of the EOSDAC, like the systems we're building are directly informed by the conversations I have about ethics and virtue and morality and philosophy and all that. So to me, it's very, very pragmatic and very real, these conversations.
For sure. And that's one of the things that I enjoy about you as well. I have to agree with you. Like, I have like a very small kind of side fitness thing I'm not going to get into, but one thing that I always preach is that development comes from all areas of your life, right? Professionally, consume information, consume books, ask questions, and take the time out to build your body, but not only your body, but your mind. I read, I would say I consume a lot of stuff on, maybe not as such as a deep level of philosophy as you do, but a lot of questions about kind of, getting to know yourself and understanding a lot of the fear-based behavior that we become entrenched in. And I think that kind of having some of the discussions that you're talking about is really important in getting to know yourself, because when you can get to know yourself, eventually you can like yourself. When you like yourself, you just behave like yourself, right?
It's so good. Absolutely. and that is I like to think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs quite often. You got food, shelter, clothing at the bottom. You get all the way to the top. It's self-actualization. It's just like really knowing yourself well enough to know, like, how do I fit in the world? Why am I significant? Why will I matter? And what am I doing? And that's where you could really connect to your intrinsic motivations. And I feel like that's where you can also not only benefit yourself, like you can prosper the most, but you can also benefit the most number of people. It's so encouraging to me to be on this call and hear you talking about how I've added value to you personally and to the community. That's very fulfilling for me. I'm like, wow, I matter, and it's very encouraging, and it reminds me that what I'm doing is important. And so it's like, I would love to just see everybody get up to that point and recognize, like, oh man, I can know myself well. And like you said, I can like myself, that's great.
The key, man, the key. I'm going to bring this a little bit to an end. Is there anything that I'm going to ask a few questions before we go, because I think you're super interesting and I don't want to pass it up. And this might be a little bit long, but hopefully, the people that are into it are going to get into it and they're going to come seek you out. I'm going to list all your resources for EOSDAC, including the the Telegram where they can find you, as well as the website. Is there anything you want to talk about, future projects that are coming up, or anything that you kind of wanted to put out there before we move on?
Yeah, I would say definitely if people could join our Discord, that would be fantastic. That's really kind of where we're trying to focus the community. We've got all these different channels, everything from like content creation to community engagement to, whatever it is that you're passionate about, any type of community, anything that you have skills to provide, you can do that as part of the DAC, and you can get paid even right now. Even before we launched the official kind of everything on chain DAC, we have kind of an interim group of custodians, and they are accepting worker proposals. You can go right to our website and say under get involved. I think there's a join, and you can actually submit worker proposals right now and get paid for adding value to the DAC. So I would love to see more people jumping into Discord and be involved in that. As far as our projects, we launched our Token Explorer very recently for the EOSDAC token, and we're very, very close. Like hopefully, I got a meeting today, hopefully very soon, kind of the first version of the member toolkit, or the member client, essentially the EOSDAC member client. And that would be kind of the basic example of how we're going to use our low-level tools. That would include registering as a member. That would include wallet functionality for EOS and EOSDAC, and also the Token Explorer. As that expands and we'll continually update it, it will eventually include voting for custodians, and it'll include creating worker proposals and tools for the custodians to vote on those worker proposals. So that's kind of the basic that we want to get out there. Once that's done, then we can start working on the actual toolkit, which is basically reproducing all of that for anybody. They could just click, and now they have everything that EOSDAC has. And EOSDAC is going to be using our own technology, eating our own dog food, as we say in the software industry, in order to provide that and actually work through all the bugs and make sure it functions well. So I'm very excited about just, again, the member kind of client that we're putting out there for EOSDAC, and then follow it up with continual improvements to that client. And eventually, hopefully Q3 is what we've committed to, the actual full working toolkit where any developer or DApp owner or project wants to build a decentralized autonomous community, they can go ahead and just launch it out. So that's what I'm mostly passionate about. Obviously, we're also really involved in the EOS community itself. Michael Yates, Rob, myself, we're actively involved in all kinds of conversations about block production issues and governance issues. And so we're heavily involved in all that. I could list 10 things that we're discussing at the moment, and they'll all change this afternoon. So that just keeping up to date on all of that and providing value there is something we have been doing and will continue to do. And I look at that as like an important project in and of itself. But yeah, those are the main things. And I'm also so actively a Steam witness. I'm very passionate about the Steam ecosystem and what's going on there. I'm involved in other cryptocurrency projects like Smart Cash and others where I like what they're adding value-wise. So I hope to continue doing all that and just adding value as best I can.
Awesome, man. Once again, as I said, you really kind of drew me into the world of DACs. I'm extremely interested in them. A lot of my favorite projects are DAC or DAC-based models. And I love what you do, man. I think you're a really, really smart cat, and I think you're just a hell of a guy and an interesting guy. So I've got 3 quick rapid-fire questions before I close this off. Number 1 is going to be, if you could project a message in the sky. I know we're just talking weird here, but if you could project a message up there to display across all of Earth in like 1 line, what would it say?
Oh, wow. In every language, right? I assume. Maybe my current philosophy, maybe something like all interactions should be voluntary. Something really? Like that. Yeah.
I love that. That's great. That's really, really good. Another one that I want to actually ask you was, and I didn't really give you a heads up on this, but I'm going to do it anyway. What would your epitaph read at the end of it all? When it's all said and done, what would be sitting on, in a perfect world, Luke's headstone? What would it say?
Oh, it's funny. Actually, I was just meeting with, you ever heard of Junto group? There's a thing Ben Franklin did. I was just meeting with some guys in a Junto group I'm in, and we actually discussed putting together our own epitaph, and I haven't done it yet, but I've been thinking about it a little bit. I think that I want to be significant. I want to actually have it say something along the lines of, Luke lived an amazing life to benefit himself and his family and his friends, and he made the world a better place, and we're all better off because he existed. Something like that.
I love it, man. That's cool. And last thing, if everybody were to read 1 book, what would that book be?
Man, I'm really hard. It's hard for me to pick favorites like that, but one that I've really liked and it's influenced me a lot in the last couple of years is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And it really goes into how neuroscience and psychology, how the brain actually works. I feel like it's almost like a manual for the human brain and how it functions. We're all acting like all the time and we don't even understand what drives our motivations. And so that's kind of like if you were to be given a job and told to work with a big, important, heavy tool, but you weren't given a manual for it, that would be bad. Well, we do this every day. So we need a manual for how the brain works. And I like Thinking Fast and Slow. I think it's a good book.
Cool. I'll definitely have to check it out. Anyway, I won't drag this on. I know you're a really busy guy. You got a lot to do. Luke, I don't even know. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. And I hope we can do it again sometime. And I look forward to seeing all your future endeavors and you accomplishing all your missions.
Thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. And hopefully, like I said, with this background picture, hopefully I'll get out to Costa Rica again sometime because I love it out there. Yeah,
well, next time you do, look me up and we'll go do some surfing. All right, my friend?
Will do.
Okay, we'll see you soon. Ciao, Luke.